Hello, you're listening to Me and Paranormal You with your host, Ryan Singer. Because it's more fun to believe.
Oh my God. Jim Barry in the house, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back again
Yeah.
to the
Thanks for
show.
having me over on the west side of the world.
Westside Joe is happy to have you on the
Oh,
Westside
great.
Mindcast. For those who don't know, I've been calling myself Westside Joe ever since I moved to the west side of Los Angeles. So Westside
Like
Joe
a
is
lot, too. Like a lot.
well, I was yeah, I mean I guess I
Which
do
I
get
don't mind, which I
yeah.
find is great and very endearing. And I love
Uh,
it.
okay, good. I was calling myself Valley Joe for a minute because I thought I was going to be
Uh-huh.
going to the Valley and
Sure.
like, buying a barbecue, having a kid, coaching Little
Mm-hmm.
League baseball, being Valley Joe.
Right.
And then I thought I was going to be Beach Joe when I thought I was
Mm-hmm.
getting a place in Santa Monica.
Yeah.
But now we're just West Side Joe over here.
Yeah.
Uh,
It's
but
it's a liminal space, isn't it?
Yeah. So what would you be right now? You'd be kind of like not too far from the ocean, not too far from the forest, Joe. Is that
Yeah.
what are we saying here?
I'm
What are
in
we?
Fey territory over here, I think.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah,
So you're
I like to call it the hinterlands.
okay. Hinterland Joe. We got Hinterland Joe on the program.
Hinterland Joe here, Mr. Hinterland himself.
Mister, everybody knows. Everybody
Mm-hmm.
goes to the hinterlands to see Hinterlands Joe, find out what's going on. You've dived into. Speaking of diving in, you've you've divin, you
Mm.
have dove into whatever it is, whatever the word.
Mm.
I guess it doesn't really matter.
No one knows. No
You've
one
gone
really knows.
through. You go through because of the show Euphomet, which is amazing, and everyone. I'm sure everyone listening has already checked out. If not, they need to.
No, thank you,
The new
everybody.
the new season is upon us. New episodes are upon us. Um, Due to the nature of your show, you like immerse yourself deeply into subjects such as, ufology, UFOs,
Hmm.
UAPs, and anything else paranormal too.
Sure.
Um, and as I think, you know what, I might even just put this. I was going to save this, but I might just put this up like as soon as we're done.
Mm.
Or maybe just in the morning. I don't know. Is there a good time to? I don't know. There's rules about when you're supposed to do stuff, but I've
No
never really
one,
paid attention to them.
no one knows.
Um, we've got a week. We're a week away from what I suspect will either be one of the greatest days in UFO history, at least in this country, or one of the, uh, ooh, gosh, I don't know, most overhyped
Yeah, right.
days. Although you know what, it's probably somewhere in the middle, right? It's probably in the
Sure.
liminal space. But
There was
um,
a hail bop right here, and then somewhere down here is potentially too soon. I don't
yeah,
know.
yeah, no, I don't think so. You should see my shoes. The I've got was that insensitive? Oh my God, you've got white sneakers. You got white Nikes on. Uh, I've got house. West Side Joe wears slippers. West Side Joe wears house. Let me. I don't know. I
Oh
played
man.
football today, so
Yeah, I love it.
yeah.
The dude abides.
Oh shit. I almost knocked
For
girlfriend's
those that
computer
aren't
over.
watching this right now, Ryan almost just karate kicked his microphone stand off of his table with his slippery feet,
So flexible.
slippered feet.
Uh, yeah. So it's like we got this UFO report that the Pentagon is supposed to be presenting to Congress.
Yeah.
Marco Rubio slides in the sneaky language into the
Hmm.
stimulus COVID relief bill.
Yeah.
Over a year ago, Marco Rubio of all people
Yeah.
slides this in. Somebody pissed him off, and somebody did something. So he said, "You know what? I'm putting this in there, and I'm going to put you on Front Street
Yeah.
with all this money that you've been using that has been earmarked for absolute garbage or lies.
Yeah.
So." I'm going to try to do my best. I'm going to sneak this language in because you didn't give me a bunch of money, or I don't, or maybe he just has a genuine interest in the field and believes that
Yeah.
everyone should have this information, which would be amazing if that were
Why?
the case.
Yeah, why is it? I've never seen that part covered in any media. Why the hell someone like Rubio snuck that in there? And I feel like you're the closest I've heard anyone, sort of speculate.
Oh,
It was some sort of political move,
100%,
right?
100% speculation. I believe anything a politician that is anyone who's a career politician, and it's not because I'm jaded, but I think I'm just realistic in this way. Any career politician, everything they do is 100% political move, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think every once in a while they can be moved to empathy by individual stories, which all of us can be when we give the time to actually stop, collaborate, and listen to
Very nice.
like a personal story. But outside of that, it's 100% politics that kind of drives all their motives, and
Sure.
because they're not doing like the scheduling of their lives. They've got people telling them where they're supposed to be, what they're talking about, reading the things they're supposed to read, giving them the quick cliff notes on what they're supposed to know going into a certain meeting, right? Because
Sure.
no one has the time to read all of this stuff. I mean,
Yeah.
I finally finished this book that I've been reading for 7 months. I couldn't imagine if like I was supposed to be reading a book a day, or like these
Oh,
house
right.
bills.
Yeah.
This like the COVID relief bill. I can't
Mhm.
remember how many pages they said it was. It was like 50,000 pages. Like
Yeah.
who's reading that?
You just can't, right? And so it must be so easy to slide things in when you need to, like that.
Exactly. And I think that's what leads us to here today, right?
Mhm.
Because I mean there are people reading it, and those people are called interns.
Mhm.
And it's crazy to think that these interns slash just got hired
Mhm.
people are writing legislation for
Sure.
politicians who said they wrote it. And oftentimes, from what I've been told from people in the know of politics, usually it's the private business who are
Mm.
actually writing all of our legislation is being
Sure.
written by the people who gave the money to get the people into office. And those people
Sure.
say, I wrote this, I'm presenting this to the floor, whatever. But it's typically corporations are writing
Mhm.
all the legislation. It's by big business.
Yeah.
And
Oh my God, you're setting this up so well, I think, for what we're about to talk about.
okay, so considering all of this, right? You got Marco Rubio slides in some sneaky language. Boom. And then lets everybody know about it. I mean, it almost has got the sense of like, it reminds me of the hidden ball trick in baseball.
Mm.
And if people aren't familiar with the hidden ball trick, it's when someone the first baseman or the second baseman or whoever goes and talks to the pitcher, acting like they're just talking about something. The pitcher sneaks the baseball into the mitt of the first baseman or second baseman. And then if someone on the other team is on that base, which they would be because they wouldn't do it with it otherwise, they take a lead off of the base, and then the person tags them because they don't know they have the baseball. They think the pitcher still has it.
Yeah.
And then it's like when you're the first baseman and you get back to the bag and you see that runner take
Yeah.
a step or two off the bag, it's got to be this moment of like, yeah, I can show everybody now that I did it. And then you
Right.
get to tag the guy. And now I feel like when the bill was passed, when that last gavel went knock knock, Rubio was like, "Hey, everybody! By the way, I put some language in here. We got to talk about UFOs, right?"
Yeah.
And got like super excited, right? So I don't exactly know why, considering under the lens of like corporations are writing, legislation, and or for the most part, at the very least, they're having input.
Yeah.
Or trying to have input through super PACs and also just closed door meetings of like, hey, you need to put this in here. I'll write it for you. Put it
Right.
in. What's the end game here for Rubio doing it? And I don't, and like I said, I don't seek out Marco Rubio interviews audio. So maybe he has discussed this on some level, but I'm just totally unaware of it. But I mean, if somebody listening knows that he has, I'd love to. I think both of us would love to hear that because I've heard nothing about that as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I would suspect if he does comment on it publicly, it would be in accordance with this idea of, you know, a bill like this information becoming available, um, participating in the populace's insight into what these potential threats could be from the sky, right? We don't know what these things are. We know that maybe they could be dangerous because we don't know what they are. I think is kind of just the I don't know, sort of the party statement, or the what is being presented right now and how this is being framed, this narrative of these potential threats, right? I think, you know, so let me ask you a few questions because I'd love to hear you continue to remind me and the audience of how this all shook out here. Why? So this sneaky little thing that was passed there by Rubio putting into the CARES Act, which is so strange. Like it's related to like COVID and emergency, you know, funds for to help stabilize the populace, and here's this little nugget basically for you know UAP information to become public or a report to be generated by the Pentagon for those in Congress, and then potentially for a more public version to be released to the public. Now, you know, it's my understanding that the Congress will be able to get that unadulterated report at first, which will have a level of confidentiality to it. And then based off of their feedback, there will be a public version of that available. That's my understanding right now, but there could be two versions. One we'll see, one we may not. So, with that being said, like, Brian, like, why are we even seeing any of this right now? Why is the Pentagon being asked to get this? How did this start? Was this all the ATIP stuff? Where did we get here?
Well, that's a very good question, and you know, I wish I had a definitive answer for people listening, but I will say this: it's hard to keep track of all the UFO acronyms.
Oh my gosh! Isn't it?
World.
Isn't it?
It is. It's really difficult. Like ATIP. I mean, it's okay. What organization? Who are we talking about? You know, and what's interesting is the timing, like you said. And I've got big theories I'm kind of working on in my mind, and they're probably a little grandiose, right?
I love it.
And the idea that, I mean, because when people sneak stuff into bills, usually, you know, especially when it's like money and stuff like that, I think they call it pork barrel, right? It's like, oh, you're fattening up this bill with money you don't need, and the Republicans and the Democrats, they're always arguing with each other over like, this is something we really need, and then someone tries to sneak some garbage in, that they want, and if you say no, you're blocking the people from getting the big thing they really need. Right. Meanwhile, what you're doing is saying, no, I'm not going to let you sneak this in because down the road it has huge consequences. They're going to be awful for people, in my opinion, depending on my point of view and my perspective, you know, financially or the way government should be run. And it seems like a fucking nightmare, to be honest. Yeah. To even think about participating on that level of politics. So you have this all coming out right now, and you have it coming out. I guess I haven't thought about this. You have this being slid into a global pandemic bill where there's a lot of confusion, there's a lot of chaos. There is people want answers, people want to know what's going on. You know, at the same time, we had just had the most tumultuous election in the history of the United States, as far as, at least I think we can say, at least in modern times. I mean, because it really, you know, it took over the spot from the Gore Bush election for sure. historians might be like, well, no, you know what? There was an election in 1842 that really blah, blah, blah. And I was like, okay, let's just stick to modern times here. Since I've been alive and from people I know, this was the craziest election. Democracy's foundation it was rattled. Trust has evaporated 100%, seemingly from the mainstream news being able to deliver any information to a large segment of the population.
Yeah.
No one believes the news anymore because people think Fox is the news, right? People think that if we're to be honest, CNN is just as blue as Fox is red, right? And but that doesn't mean that CNN's not right when they say Trump's a fascist trying to be a dictator. That doesn't mean that they were wrong. Just but anyway, you have chaos, right? You have a lack of faith in the institutions that make our country stable in a large degree. Defund the police is happening. The election was stolen. There's a global pandemic, right? The president himself from the 2016 election is just the most hated person by the other side of the aisle in the history, modern times anyway.
Sure.
Where is religion to keep you steady during this time? Where does the average person find some kind of comfort or solace amidst the storm that is swirling around them with QAnon? People are, having sex with children and then killing them, or whatever other crazy conspiracy theories melt into mainstream. Where's religion, right? More people than ever in the history of the West no longer will identify as religious.
Yeah.
So you don't have this faith really anymore, this bedrock for certain people. Now you have science in many ways. But what does science teach us? Science teaches us that the universe is going to end either in fire or in ice. That like the universe itself is mortal. And these are all things I got from The Death of Forever, written by Daryl Rainey, R.I.P. And so how does the human animal, which only became aware of its own mortality, now, because of science, the new God, handle realistically the idea that the universe itself is going to die? So, heaven's out, hell's out, all this stuff is out, right? So it's like, well, what is this all for? None of it matters, right? And then
what's the
throw
purpose?
on top of all of this, you have at least a waning popularity in the war of terrorism. Bring our soldiers home. Bring our boys. Bring our girls. Bring them home. You know what I mean? So it's like, okay, well, they're not going to let us keep doing this shit forever. Nobody believes in God anymore. They think the universe is going to die. Now we don't have anything to kind of keep them in line as far as like what's good and what's evil. Okay, now they don't want us to keep waging this unending war on terrorism that has no face. Well, has a very distinct face actually that we've painted for them. That is very, very racially biased.
Sure.
So what do we do? What's the new plan moving forward, right? And so is it potentially you layer all these things together and you have, okay, what's the new boss is the same as the old boss. And so now all the dark language surrounding UAPs, not only do they change UFO to UAP, but they're very specifically framing it as threats, imminent dangers, airspace. They're speaking of it purely in militaristic terms.
Yeah.
I mean, wouldn't it be great to have somebody in the government just sitting there talking about the possibilities of artificial or alien intelligence and, alien beings and ships or ships from a place and have them have a little bit of wonder in their voice.
Right.
As opposed to fear. And Lou Elizondo is really leading the charge on that. It feels like.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like To the Stars Academy. That's kind of like their MO, right? To a certain
Mm-hmm.
degree. Like Tom DeLonge's been out there. He's dropping those kind of phrases around
Mm-hmm.
threats to national security and things like that. So it's like, really, this is how we're playing this. This is how we're setting the table here. So it doesn't inspire a lot of confidence
Mm-hmm.
as far as what they're going to be using it for necessarily, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. What do you think about, like, whether it's the whole it's manufactured to be a new stage of mind control or whatever, suppression, oppression, that these UFOs aren't even really real.
Yeah.
Seems like they're going a long way. That's a really long game to be like, controlling a populace. I don't buy that, but myself.
Yeah.
But as opposed to like, no, these things are real and they are potentially very dangerous.
It's a great question, and you can go so deep with it, and I have a lot of thoughts. But I also agree with you. It's really hard to keep up on even the recent nomenclature, the recent language that is being presented to share these ideas with individuals. They're different amongst every group. The strategy, although, seems very consistent in terms of what we're seeing in the mainstream. And you're right, it's one that is void of wonder and more full of fear. And we're not as being individuals who uh, have become very familiar with the lore of UFOs, of flying saucers, of that whole culture. It is inherently a conspiracy culture. You really can't have one without the other, in terms of speaking about the topic in generalities. It goes back to, for example, 1947, where right out of the gate, conspiracies formed about what these flying saucers were, uh, who was piloting them, and then eventually the squashing of all public information and shifting the focus to absolute ridicule for any witnesses that participated in it. So from the get-go, students of this, anyone who's read these books by Jim Mars or any of these classic ufologists, Stanton Friedman,
Jim Mars, R.I.P. Right? I mean,
right, and so we have this natural penchant for mistrust when it comes to public disclosure or the dissemination of any information via the mainstream media or political, military, industrial complex figures. Because we know, or we believe, based on that lore, based on that history, that there could have been, sort of strong influence to, I don't know, malign the truth or public individuals, right? So with that, like, sort of backfill, this, like, kind of like, the table has been set for the presentation. What's interesting about those who are really dug in to this field, and these are the people that typically have their entire career based off covering the topic, perhaps. There was this pull, or this push rather, for disclosure, and disclosure is imminent, right? Disclosure, it's coming. They had conventions that all they'd talk about is the different machinations that they could dream up about what disclosure would look like in this perfect world, and on the other side was like maybe some sort of utopia where we would level up, we would become even maybe a different level of civilization, right? When this public could embrace the fact that these things were real and there was something beyond us, whether they were extraterrestrial or something else. And they would not be satisfied unless it was a government official unless it was a craft seemingly landing in the White House lawn to tell them what the truth was. But the second these things start to happen, everyone goes, wait a minute, why are we trusting these guys? Oh, you mean the same guys that we've been waiting for decades to tell us what the truth is? When they start talking about things, we don't want to trust them. So you see, like, no matter what, it's an agent of chaos. The whole thing is has so much baggage attached to it that it's hard to separate any of that, even for myself, into what parties we should lay our trust within. Not to mention all the different personalities and egos and storytellers and everything else that are attaching themselves to these narratives as essentially the bastions of this information, like some goddamn clarion call they're all putting together. And if they patted themselves any harder on the back, they'd break their fucking arms off their bodies. So, you have, and UFO Twitter. Like, so I guess what I'm saying is that, like, in the absence of true religion begets new gods. And what I feel like is the current movement towards purely military scientific explanation, physical crafts, what else could they be? These scenarios feels like the introduction of a new religion to me. And without these folks stepping back and trying to get a broader picture, trying to, kind of learn up on what already has been written about this topic, what already has been disclosed, what already we have found, whether they're anecdotal or scientific studies, and pair those with this new information that's coming out to really give you a more holistic idea and approach for what this kind of stuff is. You can't just listen to that bit on CNN about what this Pentagon report is going to be without considering the entire past of this very complicated, contextual experience that people have been having probably for millennia in different forms, right? And so, with all that being said, with my chips out on the table like that, in terms of how much I believe in the importance of historical context for these conversations, for those individuals in particular, not really us, because we get the sense. The people that are listening to this show right now, they have that sense. They understand that zeitgeist. They've been at the party probably longer than a lot of the newer individuals that have entered in that field and really rallied behind it. So I think we get it. We're all at the same table here. All's to say, with that in mind, I am still extremely excited about what may come from this report, because honestly, I sit there and I look at YouTube and I look at what's covered in mainstream publications, and I marvel that for the first time, we have come to a consensus agreement within mainstream narrative that this is real and we don't know what it is. But UFOs are real. So let's just think about that for a little bit, because for as long as you and I have been, in the corner of the library reading these books because we're geeks, and people going well, that shit's fake. We are getting more of a consensus that, listen, we're giving you a piece of disclosure here in the sense that we're saying, yes, we're acknowledging your reality is our reality. It's our shared reality, one in which UFOs exist.
Well, I love that. And I think what we can't lose here too is, in no small part, where we are today is because of the dogged determination of ufologists for the last 70 years,
Very
and
much so.
who have been unafraid, seemingly, of being ridiculed publicly or otherwise or privately in social circles,
Mm.
of standing by beliefs, right? And which is it's a tricky conversation,
Mhm.
saying that you believe anybody or you admire anyone who stands by their belief when everyone else is saying they're wrong, because
Mhm.
because then there's the arbiter of like, well, this belief is right and this belief is very wrong, and we all know exactly those kind of beliefs, right? um, we're not talking about supremacy or things like that. um, Experiencers standing by, being willing to talk publicly about their experiences, and not everybody, that's not everybody's bag, and not everybody's supposed to do that or is required to do that, and they shouldn't feel guilty because they haven't
Yeah.
as well. There's no part of me that thinks that. um, the historical context, being able to frame what's happening in the modern, is very important to me, and it's always been important to me.
Yeah.
Specifically in comedy, how could you innovate or be a good comedian if you had no idea about the comedy that came before you? Because
Mhm.
you think you're inventing the wheel when everyone else has been driving a car
Mhm.
already. And it's like, look at this I made. And it's like, yeah, and everybody's like, yeah, we've been driving this car for years. You know what I mean? Um, and you can look foolish doing it.
Mhm.
If you just strikes me of like when Taylor Swift was on the cover of, I don't know why I'm thinking of this. Taylor Swift, I think about this a lot more often than I should. Taylor Swift was on the cover, I think, of Rolling Stone magazine with Paul McCartney.
Mm.
And the internet was, Twitter specifically, was just like, who's this old guy with Taylor Swift?
Oh
And
man.
it was one of those moments where I'm just like,
Yeah.
what's it all for?
Yeah.
What's the point, right, of leaving an artistic legacy behind? If you're Paul McCartney,
Wow.
and people have no idea who you are because they're young and stupid, right? And when
Yeah.
I say stupid, I mean dumber than shit. No, I'm just kidding. When I say stupid, I just mean they haven't been turned on to the Beatles, or who knows, whatever, right? Not that they have
Right.
to be. Um,
Right.
but without the historical context. But you know who knows who Paul McCartney is? You bet your sweet ass? Taylor Swift.
Taylor Swift. Yeah.
Right, and people can say what they want about her, as far as like the argument can be had about her musicianship or whatever. I don't know. I know everybody I know that loves music is pretty into Taylor Swift,
Yeah. Right.
and I'm not mad at them for it.
Right.
Taylor Swift knows who the hell Paul McCartney is, that's for sure,
You
and
damn
that's what
right.
allows her to reach, you know what I mean? I mean, she seems to have a knowledge of what came before. And I think
Mhm.
within the ufology world or the uapology world, um, I do think that's very important for context. And that's where the people who have been dedicating so much time and effort into researching this for years and years and years, they really serve to benefit the rest of us. And I mean, sure, I've had a paranormal podcast for 7+ years or whatever it is, but it hasn't been specifically about UFOs only the whole time, right?
Mhm.
I in no way, shape, or form would stand here and say I'm a UFO expert.
Mhm.
I need to be in front of Congress asking them questions about this report. That's I have no delusions about that, right?
Yeah.
There are people who live, breathe, eat, and poop this stuff,
Mhm.
and every day of their lives,
Yeah.
and it's important to have perspectives from, I think, just because someone's late to the party doesn't mean that their opinion shouldn't matter, and doesn't mean that they're not deserving of knowing the truth or having
Mhm.
information given to them.
Mhm. Or being a part of that movement, right? Like,
Exactly, for sure. And so I am also very excited. I mean, for the record, I mean, plan on doing a live stream over here next Wednesday. Um, Yeah. Or Tuesday, excuse me, next Tuesday, June
Next
20th.
Tuesday.
Okay, it works out. It works out. I was like, oh my god, like I've had. No, I'm not trying to alarm people, but I've had like an incredible amount of like doctor's appointments in the last few
Mm.
weeks,
Oh,
and like
you've alarmed everyone now. Thank
yeah,
you.
and it's just because I hadn't seen a doctor for a year and a half, so I'm getting all my physicals and things like that, right? And and so I just assume I have a doctor's appointment every day. It feels like almost right. But I cleared Tuesday. Tuesday's
Yeah,
cleared for me because I knew
that's
it was a
good.
big day.
Well, I
Um,
thought this was Wednesday 4 or 5 separate times today, and I just could never get it. I logged into 2 separate Zoom meetings that were Wednesday meetings today. So don't you
today,
worry.
today has the most Wednesday vibe ever
Okay, so I'm
for a
not going
Tuesday.
nuts.
No, you're not going nuts. I've thought it was Wednesday multiple times today, which
Good.
I
Okay.
mean, we're making jokes about it, and it makes me wonder if there's some kind of wrinkle in time happening. Um,
Oh
but
man.
when you run into people and everybody's on the same page about
Hmm.
being on the wrong page,
Yeah. Then something else is fucked up.
something else is fucked up. It's not
Yeah.
our. It's not our. It's
It's
not
not
our. We're
our
not a bunch of dummies.
not our
Something.
problem.
Something cosmically
Yeah.
fucked up, right? Okay. Good. We're on the same page about that as well, as
No,
always.
people need to email you if they agree with this,
Yes,
or
they
on
do.
Facebook, like whatever. Like, please agree with us that although we're recording this on a peek behind the curtain here, Tuesday, June 22nd, that it feels like Wednesday, June 23rd.
It
And
really, really does.
maybe you are actually listening to this on Wednesday, June 23rd, and maybe that's why all of this happened in the first place.
Actually, that's a good
It was
point.
that
And
collective,
I love it.
dude, that collective audience. They're
That
going to hear
June
this episode and they're
23rd. Yeah, they're gonna vibe it too. And there's something magical about June 23rd. The more I think about it, I'm seeing it in my mind. I'm seeing 6. I'm seeing 2, 3. I'm seeing 2,
yeah.
0, 2, 1. So you got 6. You got 2. 2 times 3 is
Oh,
6, and then you got
listen to
2,
this.
0, and then
Oh
2,
man,
1 is 3. So 2, 3. So you got 6, 2, 3, 2, 3. You got all kinds of 2, 3, 2, 3, 2,
dude,
3.
there's nothing that gets me going more than numerology scatting.
Okay, well, that's I didn't know that about you.
Yeah. I can blame Tim at first, but now you doing it, it's just like, woo,
That's why I
here we
love
are.
playing pickleball. That's why I love playing pickleball because you have
Yeah.
to say 3 numbers before you serve every time, and it's like the possibilities are endless for good times.
Oh man, I don't
Um,
know. I feel like I'd be bad at that.
I think you'd love pickleball,
I've
and
never played it.
we'll have to get you on the court sometime. Um, let me throw this to you. This is an idea I came up with, and again, it might be me inventing the wheel when everyone's already driving a Subaru. Just from reading about Daryl Rainey had a very interesting theory about the universe
Hmm.
and how to escape the death of forever.
Hmm.
And it's through elevated consciousness and ego death,
Mm.
like true ego death, like the death of self, the death of identity and
Mm.
separateness from all,
Hmm.
and how ego was born at the same time linear time came about for us. And but he was saying that the universe, um, although being dissected and trying to be explained mathematically, as a scientist, he was all for that, of course. But how it worked in accord, hand in hand with just the same way that all music can be broken down mathematically.
Mm.
So he was saying the universe was essentially, the short of it was, the universe is a song,
Mm. Mm-hmm.
okay?
Mm-hmm.
And we need to listen to the song.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
That
Mm-hmm.
the long and short of it is the universe is a song. Math is great, but guess what? We need to be using our intuition. We need to be using our left and our right brain,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
scientifically, to see the whole picture of what the universe is,
Yeah.
and and that'll give you a better idea of how to actually live forever,
Yeah.
which is your consciousness. So I was thinking, and he's saying that like certain symbols and archetypes obviously resonate with us deeply, and
Mhm.
You know, lots of people have written about that, and it's very fascinating. And like the circle, resonates with us so deeply for so many reasons. It's like,
Mhm.
it's the perfect form, and no matter
Sure.
where you look at it, you're never at the end or the beginning of it, or you're
Mhm.
always at the beginning or always at the end of it, even though there is no. Anyway, it's like this great,
Yeah.
just kind of makes your mind run in
Mhm.
circles. Um, if on paranormal investigations, this is the big jump from what we're talking about, by the way.
Okay. I'm ready
You're
for it.
having this idea that instead of and people are probably doing this, but like using sacred geometry for tonal communication, musically,
Okay.
like using the Fibonacci sequence
Mhm.
and other things like that, to be developing tones to
Mm.
be played
Mhm.
if in fact the universe is conscious, which I believe it is, and we're all connected to it and we're all part of it, and all these things resonate deeply with us because it's the fundamental building blocks of everything we are and
Mm.
everything that is. There are certain things that resonate more deeply with us because of these fundamentals. We should be tapping into those fundamentals
Yeah.
and even musical ways to
Mm.
try to get responses. And I guess, part of me is now thinking back to like, what is it, Space Odyssey?
Mm. Mhm.
Isn't there a keyboard that they're
Yeah.
kind of playing, right?
Right.
Which is just how brilliant that movie is and like
Yep.
ahead of its time. But so that kind of speaks to it. But like taking
Mm.
that and
Close
bringing it in,
Encounters as well.
or yeah, Close
Yeah.
Encounters.
Close
That's what I
Encounters.
meant.
Mhm.
Um, I feel like that's bring that into the location, right,
Mm. Mhm.
and see what
Mhm.
happens
Mhm.
potentially.
Yeah.
Um, and I wouldn't be surprised if some version of that is kind of what ends up happening here in the future. The more and more I, I really feel like the disclosure that's happening next week, um, depending on what it is, I feel like it's a huge step as
Mm.
far as almost it's a formal announcement in a much more formal way than them just saying, "Hey, here's some videos we leaked to the newspaper."
Yeah.
That
Right.
somebody leaked to the newspaper. And how often does a stranger show up to your house without some kind of formal greeting?
Mhm.
So, is it possible that Tuesday is the person who is having the house party introducing you to a new friend you've never met?
Mm.
The old classic style, like, hey, this is Ryan. Ryan loves collecting baseball cards, playing pickleball. He drinks way too many milkshakes if he's allowed. And has a paranormal podcast, been doing stand up comedy for 18 years. These are aliens. Aliens also love baseball because of the radio frequencies that have been traveling out into space for 70 plus years
Right.
or however long. And
Right.
they have their own kind of milkshakes they like, blah, 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 blah,
Sure.
blah. You two probably have some things to talk about. So I'll leave you
Yeah.
here. And the party goes,
Yeah.
and then he goes and they go and
Baby
introduce other people.
here. I'll circle back.
Yeah. So do you think this possibly could be a formal step in the acknowledgement? Because isn't that the name of Dr. Stephen Greer's first film, Unacknowledged?
Yeah. Unacknowledged. Yeah.
This
And
is
yeah.
acknowledgement,
Acknowledgement.
essentially, right? Because if
Yeah.
I'm not mistaken, this provision in the CARES Act was like through the Pentagon. It was like, give us the kitchen sink,
Mhm.
everything you got,
Yeah.
dump it on us.
Yeah. I mean I mean what if I got
I just
something in
thought
my
you said,
throat?
"What up?"
What up?
Yo,
Got something
what
in my
up?
throat here. Getting all choked up. No, the tile guy's been in today, and so like Kendra and I will walk around the house, and then just out of nowhere we'll just be like, "Whoop, whoop," and
Oh,
there'll be
because
like
there's the
dust.
debris,
Yeah,
and the
it'll
dust.
just be like, "Whoop." we'll just look at each other like, you're going to be okay. So that's what's happened right there to me. Yeah, is this acknowledgement? Is this possibly that introduction between us and something much greater? I think so, possibly in the way that we'll better understand how publicly they will acknowledge how little they know. And that will be the introduction I think we get here in official capacity of like, we have some ideas. These things are real, whatever they may be. They are, we can identify them by these, sort of five, what are they? Elizondo will quote five identifiables. They have participated in these events that we've been learning about, these videos that you've seen, all this stuff. These are legitimate, and we really don't know what they are. And so we'll need to, can we just get back to you on that? I think is what it'll be. I think it'll be a confirmation that, yeah, this stuff is, we are looking into it. We have this new task force in the Pentagon that has replaced the ATIP program. And we are fully moving forward with, trying to figure out what this is in a more maybe public facing front. And because it's already been going in that direction, for the Pentagon to even be addressing these type of things, for the White House press secretary to even be fielding questions about this report and about the UAP phenomenon, the UFO phenomenon in general, in ways that aren't, sort of loaded with crass sarcasm and cynicism, has
Mayor
been
Phoenix. I hope you're listening.
There you go. And even they've come around. They've done a full they've done a 180, I guess is what it means when they go the other direction. And they've embraced what their sort of misstep was. And I think maybe, we're seeing the parallels to that from that mayor of Phoenix. We're seeing the parallels within our own public facing government, perhaps. Now, there is going to be probably a line in the sand with these folks, because there's going to be information that is out there that the Pentagon, being as all-knowing as they maybe purport to be to the public, does not have access to, because a lot of this information is tucked away in small corners of black budget contractors on purpose, because you can
Very
keep
few
secrets in
people,
there and you can't get them.
right? Isn't it like, it's a situation where, in my mind's eye, right, and then it's all speculation, very few people are privy to these kinds of, details, potentially, right? It's not like there's like 7,000 people out there who know about some of this. Right. Potentially, in my mind, it's like, you're talking about 15 people, maybe, if you're lucky, who might know some of this really high level sensitive stuff.
Right.
But I will say this. I'm fucking excited. And
Me
like,
Me too.
to me, best case scenario is this is the formal introduction, and then guess what? They show up and they're like, now that we've been introduced, we'll take it from here. It's like, it's like the MC's on the mic, and then the headliner shows up.
Right.
And says, I got this. I'm seasoned. I'm a professional. I've been doing this a long time. Let's get to the good stuff.
Right.
And I think the reason the fear narrative is being pushed with the way the language they're using and the way they're framing it is just like you said, because they don't know it. They don't know, really. They don't have the answers. And I don't even think there's a small group of people in the Pentagon who have the answers. And if nothing else, the government's job, at least to, its own perception is to make sure everyone else's perception is like, we got this. We got this covered. We can handle this.
Mm-hmm.
Let us do our job. We're in charge. Because if everybody was like, they have no idea what the hell they're doing, they can't do that. They're not, they can't handle this. Then guess what? They're not the government anymore.
Yeah.
I think the Egyptian Spring is a very good example of, if everyone just decides to go into the streets, guess what? The United States government is no longer there.
Yeah. Right.
It's that simple. Really, it really, really is. And I'm not trying to incite a revolution here, but I'm just stating facts. If everyone floods the streets, guess what? Our military isn't large enough.
Yeah. It's not QAnon if it's true.
Right?
Right?
Exactly. So I think I think people at the top, they realize the house of cards that all of this stuff is, and by the way, always has been. The fragility of the political ecosystem, the governmental structures, and not to mention Mother Nature itself, which we're seeing. There's a fragility there that, I'm not saying that there's also not incredible strength, because there obviously is. And we've seen that play out in dark ways and positive ways across the board. But there is such a fragility there.
Yeah.
And to show weakness on any front is a loss.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it kind of reminds me of the miniseries about how am I not remembering this? It's an HBO miniseries about the nuclear meltdown in Russia.
Oh, Chernobyl.
An amazing series.
Mm-hmm.
It's beautiful. It's wow. Everything about it.
Yeah.
And there's a very poignant moment in there where the Russian government has a very, to them, difficult choice to make. Do we call for help? Help has been offered. Do we accept it and show our weakness and inability to handle this, and therefore potentially topple everything we've built as far as the perception of who we are as a people? Or do we ignore it, let more people die, and just hope like hell we can pull this out of our ass?
Right.
And it's sad when you see this happening.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying that's the level of, I'm not comparing this to that necessarily.
Right.
But if you're going to start framing stuff the way you're framing it as threats, imminent danger, threats to our airspace, our national security, and then you're going to come out and say you don't know what it is, you're not doing that unless you've got a very concrete plan of why you're doing it. Because just to come out and be like, hey, everybody, we don't know what it is, and it's kind of scary to us.
Yeah.
That's
because that seems calculated there. And what does that mean? And that's what you do, right?
Yeah.
Can I tell you what I hope happens? What I hope happens is that this report is generated and it allows those that are sitting on the sidelines, that are smart, creative adults in the room, to finally feel the freedom to fully immerse themselves in this subject without ridicule. And that this entire topic transforms from one of fear and whatever that can bring to one of discovery and wonder.
That's a beautiful idea.
Can you imagine that, though? Can you imagine, there's a briefing and they're talking, oh my gosh, this week, some of the smartest people in the world have paired with some of the most in-depth investigators of the field. They're talking to witnesses and, oh my God, they got this new footage. And now they're talking about multidimensionality. And that's what this press conference is about. And oh my God, are these a vehicle? Are these like sort of a touch point for us to understand our relationship to reality and the universe even better? Is this a touch point to find that there is a veil, right? And that these things are peeking in and out, and oh my God, can the rest of paranormality be linked to these in some sense? And we start getting very like sort of ultra terrestrial really quickly in a very positive way with perhaps budgets that ufologists and paranormal researchers have only dreamed about, right? And what if that is it? What if this is that next evolution of scientific discovery is on the cutting edge of the strange? And that's where this may lead. This one report generated from decades and decades of hard labor and exposure. And this stuff doesn't become just, this is weird. It becomes, no, we're participants in the strangeness of our own reality now, in a way where we feel free to dive as deep as we wish and have support for that. That's what I hope happens with this.
Wow, I think you're ahead of your time on this. And I mean, I think you're also ahead of the timeline. I think you're seeing the future because as you're describing this,
I love it.
wow,
I'm looking at my obsidian mirror here.
Describing and scrying, we combine
Yeah,
this. As you're
I like
describing
that.
this.
That's great.
That is fun. That's a fun
Write
word.
that term down.
That's a happy accident. That's a good idea. Let me write this down. Describing. As you're describing these events, it resonates with me as, yes, this is the future. And it might not be the future that you and I get to see.
Yeah, right.
That would be worst case scenario. It's too far in the future for us to be around for it, at least in these physical forms. And I'd like to think that it's more than possible that those are, you turn on C-SPAN any random day and there's a talk on multidimensionality and ultra-terrestrials. And I really, really hope that C-SPAN is going to be covering, and I can't believe they wouldn't be, the whole thing here, right? Like when it's delivered to Congress, I don't know the procedures here, but
right.
I'm guessing, is there like a discussion happening in the House? I don't know. I'm going to have C-SPAN on because there's, I think, 3 or 4 different C-SPAN channels, and through their website, you can watch for free. I'm going to be, checking that out all day, from the morning on, seeing if we can catch any live footage. But I think you're ahead of the timeline here, and I love this because it is only a matter of time. If the arrow of progress points forward or upward, however anyone wants to, view it, these are inevitable conversations, are they not?
Yeah, very much so.
Someone might argue, well, multidimensionality is going to be proven to be false, so no. It's like, well, let's put that skepticism of that hardcore skepticism of like that, frankly, is probably quite uninformed, out the window. This is the inevitable future.
Sorry, I don't mean to cause a pause here in our conversation, but I was going to share something here that was probably pretty poignant.
I'm into poignant shares.
There was a very interesting video interview that I watched late last week with Lou Elizondo. He was doing a press tour last week in kind of hyping up what this release would be. And he had a particular interview. It was very short, and it was with the Washington Post. And during this live interview, Lou starts to veer into our neck of the woods and starts to mention, he states pretty clearly that they don't know what these are. And yes, they could be threats, but they also could lead to scientific discoveries that we could never imagine. And there seems to be, if they're not all physical, some sort of multidimensionality going on. And those may not have been his actual words, so don't quote me on that. But it's a very illuminating video, and it's the first time that I've heard Lou really embrace this idea of saying like, listen, this could be something much more complex than a mere physical craft. And we don't know what that means right now, but because of how they operate, because of how they appear, because of how they interact with us, there's something much stranger that doesn't seem to live by the confines of this world's or this dimension's rules, right? It's playing by somebody else's rules. And so whatever that means, we're not sure, but it is pointing towards this direction of something much more strange. And that's like kind of where he started to go, you
I
know?
love this. I see. I
So
didn't know
it
this.
gives me hope.
Because he's the guy who was in charge. I mean, he was the guy in charge of ATIP, right?
Yeah, and he believes right now that there is an oncoming government conspiracy right now to withhold more of this information and not drop it. And so he has framed himself, maybe very cleverly in terms of PR, perhaps, and maybe publication deals or something. I'm not sure. As a defender of our rights to know more about this as the American public. And he is going head on against Pentagon. He's going head on against his former masters. Now, the
He's got a
pushback on
lawsuit
this,
against, by the way.
indeed, and there is pushback by his critics because people are rightfully saying, like, listen, this guy was counterintelligence when he was in the military. This dude's a spook. Like, why are we listening to this guy? His defense is, I was a spook for you. I was a spook for the United States government. I was doing that for you. I wasn't doing it against you, and I would never do that because it's against the oath to my country. And I mean, can you argue that? You know what I mean?
You just
So
change. I mean, you just say, you know, we've talked about fractured media, how we're, you know, there's so many different dimensions you can live in currently.
yeah,
Depending on what you consume, what you see, what you hear, what you eat, what you drink. Yeah, I mean, you can just say something, right? And if you say it long enough, there's a comedian out there who's been telling everybody how cool he is for 20 years. And guess what? Everyone thinks he's one of the coolest comedians in the world. It's no accident, right? You're creating the narrative, and I don't know. I wish, like you said, I wish the agent of chaos wasn't, or the trickster wasn't such a huge component in all of this. It's like, can't we for once just get somebody who doesn't have all this baggage attached to them to give the straight, simple answer that's clean?
yeah, right.
And I don't think that's going to happen. But what I do, because, you know, everyone's just so complicated. That's never going to be a logical. Maybe in a movie that could happen, but the day needs to be soon when admitting you don't know something is not equated with weakness, right? And that's, I think, unfortunately, such a big part of all of this. And not to mention so many other areas of our life that are more immediate. Just admitting you don't know something is not weak. It actually takes supreme strength. And if we can get past that, and you and I talked so many times about this, and I think disclosure is one of the biggest fundamental human rights out there. Knowing that we're not alone in the universe is not information that is privy. And I don't care what qualifiers are attached to it. Well, the alien said we're not allowed to tell you. Well, guess what? I don't care. I don't care if they said you're not allowed to tell me.
They're not our boss.
With you.
They're not your boss.
Yeah, are they? Yeah, that's when you just sing a song that I've been singing for years called "You're Not the Boss of Me." I'm not going to sing it to you now, but my family, my sister hates this song. My girlfriend hates this song, but the aliens would hate it as well. They might leave and never come back. Weakness should not be equated with admitting you don't know something, and I do think that this is potentially, let's we're optimists. This is potentially a very big step
Mhm.
in trying to change that narrative.
Yeah.
Because Elizondo, he knows all the information, right? He's saying they don't know. Guess what? To me, I take him at his word on that. I don't think he's some kind of double agent with a fake lawsuit saying that his name's been smeared and everything else, just so we all think that he's got credibility.
Yeah. Right.
Well, if I come out and say we don't know what these are, and then I sue you for trying to ruin my name for telling the truth, no one will know that I'm lying. So let's send me out there saying this,
Right.
even though we know exactly what these things are.
Right.
Which, now that I say it like that, that's actually a pretty good plan. But I don't think that's what's happening.
Yeah, once you start getting into gymnastics, you have to start questioning the whole theory, right? 'Cause it starts,
it's like, well, it could be
yeah,
if this lever and this button and
Right.
this thing and blah 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 blah.
Right.
And then now we're off. Now we're
Yeah.
off to imagination land in many ways.
Right.
The new religion, the forming of a new religion. That's an interesting concept. My buddy Noah Lampert. And there's lots of people out there talking about, and many people would say even Jesus this is what he was really saying when he was saying the church is inside, it's like we are all God, right? And we are all God. And the moment we stop looking outside for God and desperately seeking Susan in this case would be God, maybe that's when it all clicks over for us, right?
Right. Right.
Wow, we've covered a lot of ground here tonight.
We have. I love it. I mean, I think that if anything, I really hope that we've excited people for this upcoming report. Like, I
think
feel
they
like
need
we're
to be
doing
excited. I
sports
mean,
radio here.
Right? This is like the Super Bowl's coming up.
Right.
I just don't think we can stress enough that you might look back in history on or like in your own life if you're listening to this and think, wow, I really had no idea how big this was going to be. This has the potential for that kind of, right? Being like,
Yeah.
oh, I wish I would have allowed myself to be a little more excited leading up to the greatest disclosure of
Right.
UFO information in the history of the world.
Yeah.
And it makes you wonder why other countries haven't done it. But
Mm.
but that's a whole nother topic of discussion. And some people will be like, oh, it's because the U.S., it's like they want us to be first. It's like they don't give a shit about us. I'm like incredibly excited. I think people should be excited. And there's an old saying in show business that a lot of I've even heard friends of mine say, "Oh, I don't let like when they're up for something really big, whether it's a big role in a movie or something else, and you'll hear them say, I don't let myself get too excited because
Right.
if it doesn't happen,
Yeah.
I'm not devastated."
Sure.
And I remember telling one of my friends this like 10 years ago, 15, like a long time ago. I was just like, I'm not going to do that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to be devastated constantly
Yeah.
because I'm going to let myself be excited. I mean, why am I doing this if I'm not allowing myself? And I've been up for some, pretty cool things that ended up devastating me when I didn't get them. And, and I'm glad, I'm glad I let myself get excited about it. And I'm definitely letting myself get excited about this.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Maybe if you're around next Tuesday, I'm even going to try to hit you up and see if you'll jump in, depending on what
Sign
your
me
schedule
up.
looks like. Okay.
Sign me up.
Alex Mastretta will be over here at the house, and we'll be just kind of. We're just planning on going for as long as it takes.
That's great, man. I'd love to pick his brain because really, like, maybe Alex will correct me if we talk next week. Alex was a part of a team that essentially was the precursor to this other industrialized organization or project, which was ATIP. So the I could be wrong, but as a part of Star Team, which was funded by Bigelow money, right? Yeah. Like that formed into OSAP, which then formed into ATIP. So, with Harry Reid and Bigelow kind of all sort of a part of that milieu. So it would be that. I mean, he's the perfect guy to kind of, he's the Charles Barkley of this panel.
You know what I mean? And also because he's not afraid to say shit. Like if somebody's being racist on Facebook, he doesn't just sit there and give them a free pass.
Yeah.
Which has burned some bridges for him. But that's why I love him.
Yeah.
And also, it should be noted for people listening, just a fun coincidence to tie all this together. I've been talking so much about like consciousness and, this book that I finally finished and by Rainey. Bigelow is out of the space game, kind of, and he's got like a whole foundation research institute on consciousness. Mm-hmm. What does that tell you?
Mm-hmm.
And when you listen to Dr. Stephen Greer and the people on like his side of the fort when it comes to UFOs and consciousness and love and peace and all this, and meditate and all this kind of stuff, totally the opposite of fear-based. It's about consciousness. Consciousness being the advanced technology that aliens are using to power their UFOs, UAPs.
Yeah. I mean, this is where shit gets so exciting, right?
And now you got Bigelow with a Consciousness Institute, spending his billions of dollars investigating consciousness.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, sold Skinwalker Ranch, started a consciousness research facility or whatever, or I haven't even looked into it really. I wonder if he's got a facility somewhere. We should go there and knock on the door.
Right.
See if they'll let us in.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's exciting. It's just a very exciting time, even though I understand that essentially we are at the wheel. Bring the wheel back. We are at the wheel right now, and human history is in my belief. If you zoom out and look at the timeline and what it will become, I believe we are in just the early infantile stages of what this means to finally acknowledge UFOs, and then let alone years and years from now when there's relationships formed in more open ways in society. I mean, we are at the very, very beginning, but guess what? We wouldn't be driving our Subarus. I don't have a Subaru, but we wouldn't be driving our cars if they'd never invented the wheel. Those dirty bastards who couldn't even poop in a toilet. If they didn't invent the wheel for us, we wouldn't have.
I love it. We wouldn't have flying saucers. That's for sure.
No, we sure wouldn't. We sure wouldn't. Jim, this has been great. Everybody needs to listen to. Everybody needs to listen to Euphomet.
Thank you.
Tell them where they can find everything.
You can find it at euphomet.com. You spell that EUPHOMET. We're on pretty much all the podcast platforms. You can find me at It's Jim Perry on Twitter and Instagram, and at Euphomet everywhere else. And we're kind of wrapping up our 4th season right now. Very happy with it. Very happy with the response. I think it's the perfect season to start out on if you're a new listener. And for those of you that have been listening to the show this entire time and have been a part of this journey, because, since we go way back, so I love you very much for that. So thank you so much.
Yeah, well, they love you too. I mean, what an incredible show. Amazing storytelling. It's wonderful, and the research is top notch. And I'm excited about next week. Hopefully, we'll work out. You and I will talk later about that. And then also, I'm very excited because I just locked in today. I'm just going to do this quick plug at the end. I locked in the date to film what'll be my first hour special, which is long overdue. But I will be filming a comedy special. We just locked it in today, and like I said, I'm not going to let myself not get excited about this so early. The fact that I only have the location locked in as of 4 hours ago, and I'm already promoting this thing. October 23rd, the Saturday, the weekend before Halloween, at the old Post Town School in just outside of Middletown, Ohio. If you've watched or read Hillbilly Elegy. That area. So, an old haunted school. I will be performing stand-up comedy. We're going to be doing 2 shows. Obviously, there's going to be all kinds of information in the future. I'll be plugging that. I'll be doing 2 nights of paranormal investigation in the school before filming the shows. So Thursday and Friday night will be private paranormal investigations. I will be, filming. And who knows? Our buddy Jim Perry might even be there for that.
Who knows?
So. Who knows? I mean, this place is wild. This place is really, really cool. And so
I'm bound to be found in dark corners of haunted schools on occasion.
Yes,
People just
you-
walk in expecting to investigate, and I'm just there.
And there he is.
Yeah.
Also, just a quick reminder, I'll be at Savage Henry Comedy Club up in Eureka, California. That is September 3rd and 4th.
I'll also be
Friday and
there.
Saturday. Oh, my God.
I'll be there too. So
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. You're going to... You will find that the singularity has happened. Jim and I are the same person. We've just been different representations of the same entity this whole time. And then I got I think Mason City Limits in Mason City, Illinois, just booked this afternoon, hoping to book. I'm booking a lot of other dates. I think I'll be in Denver as well. I believe Denver will be the first weekend of October. More details on that when I can lock that in for sure. But October 1st and 2nd, I believe, I'll be in Denver, Colorado. So, and Jim, who knows? He might end up being there as well.
Yeah, right.
But so lots of tour dates coming your way. I'll keep you posted on that. But anyway, dude, this was fun.
Thank you so much.
I'm going to put this up tomorrow because it felt like a Wednesday.
yeah.
Anyway.
Hell yeah. Wednesday energy. Here we go.
Wednesday energy. Thanks for listening, everybody. We appreciate you. Patreon.com/Ryan Singer, $1 or $3 a month. Alex Mastretta and I went to the Devil's Gate Dam. I always get that backwards. And, we're going to have to visit there again because the trails were closed. But you can see the video exclusively on Patreon, at least for a few more weeks, of the investigation, or just like walking around and getting some cool history from Alex about the location and stuff like that. So check that out. And if I don't see you at a show soon, I'll see you at the Water Island.